Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A very good morning to everybody who will be, inshallah, joining the live today. Calm motherhood, a myth or a reality? Well, just to lay the format out, inshallah ta'ala, we will be going step by step into our mind process and into developing a mental map to basically find that calmness that we require, that is actually essential for our motherhood. I am on my iPad due to technical difficulties. I cannot use my laptop. So I do apologize in advance if the screen or me looking at the camera looks a bit odd, but this, alhamdulillah, we make the best of whatever we have, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair to everybody joining in. So, bismillah. Let's start with a story, and this is a Shakespearean story, and the story is called The Winter's Tale. And if anybody has ever read the story, A Winter's Tale, what happens is this king gets deluded with this idea that his wife is not faithful to him, and the children that he has from this wife are not his own. And although his most loyal advisors, his courtsmen, and even in the spiritual realm, his oracle tells him that you are deluded and what you're thinking is not right, he still presses on to think that his wife is not faithful to him just because he wanted to go on his thought process, on his mental whim. What does happen then? What happens is basically um, he imprisons his wife, and his son dies. And once the wife goes into a coma, only then he realizes, when his own family tragedy hits him outside of his head, he realizes that he has been thinking wrong, or he has been believing in a extremely wrong thought process, when everybody around him kept telling him that he was deluded, or what he was thinking was not right or was not good for his family. What does this story tells us? This story tells us the strength of our mind, the strength of our belief system. Why did I start with a Shakespearean story and not with a Quranic ayah? Well, usually we do start with a Quranic ayah, and Parenting with Allah by my side is always talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to be the center of our relationships. However, these tales also connect with the humanness of us. As a life coach, as a parent coach, what I've seen over time is Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What I've seen over time is that we as human beings have a disconnect in our spirituality when we are not feeling our best, when we are not healthy in our mind, when we're not healthy in our body. We even spiritually lag, and sometimes these stories help us connect back to our realities. Why did I start with the mind? Like I said before, I said that we ultimately are people of stories. Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many stories in the Quran, and sometimes the same kind of stories with different interpretations or different understandings, or a different part of that story is repeated again in the Quran? Because all of these have lessons for us. And today's lesson is how to create calmness, how to put our feet on the ground. Number one question that I would like to ask anybody, especially the moms who have younger children, they are, I think, the most depleted in energy. They are the most depleted in self-confidence. Sometimes, especially if you are yourself in your early 20s or later 20s, it does not matter. But whenever you are a first-time mom, or in your 30s, or maybe even in your 40s, it does not matter. Age does not matter. Experience matters. And when you have a birth, and when you have a child, whether it's your first child or whether it's your 10th child, every pregnancy comes with their own set of problems and their own set of dilemmas or solutions. So what I would like to say is here that the mothers of younger children are the most depleted in energy. And when you're depleted in energy, your thought process is usually not straight. And I've seen so many mothers say, oh, I'll feed my kid first and then I will eat. Oh, I will put them to sleep and then I will have my me time. And I've seen that in this process, in this mindset, what has happened is our thought process has started to deteriorate. Our mood swings have started to come in. Our exaggerated irritations. Remember this term, exaggerated irritations have overcome our logical mind. I will not I will not talk about this in detail and length, as this is not the platform to do so. But I know our marriages and our work relationships and our in-laws relationship, or even our relationship with our own siblings, also seep into our parenting and actually take us away from that calmness. For example, very recently I spoke to somebody who has spent 20 years into their marriage, and now they are suffering from a fibromyalgia, which is basically a pain management sort of a disorder, where they have unexplainable pain throughout their body, in their shoulders, etc., etc. And when I spoke with when I took the history of the client, what was bothering her, her husband was good, her children were healthy, she had a stable home, she was not fearful for her life or for her money or for her wealth or for her, but her health was gone. Why? Because for 22 years in her marriage, she had been holding on this burden of making her sister's marriage work, her mother's emotion work, her other sister's ego work, and all of the burden that she was carrying from her own family was seeping in so badly into her life that now she has fallen ill. So we cannot say, and every case scenario is different. But what I want to start here from, and I'm not diverging from the topic, what I want to start here from, and why did I give these two examples, the Shakespearean example and this client's example, or is because our mind and our heart, they have to be in sync in order to find the calm. I can tell you, oh, on my fingertips, I can tell you very quickly, very easily, even if you Google, I can say, oh, please breathe and put your feet on the ground and breathe in 3 times and breathe out 3 times, and actually try to meditate. And when you're in your salah, then actually pay attention to what you're saying. And all of this is good when you are in that state of mind, when you are able to do that. A person who is not in a healthy mind state, or a person who is sleep deprived, or a person who is constantly in an anxious mode and is thinking what's going to happen next and has a list of so many things to do, but they cannot actually go from one task to the other without being petrified, without being, hyperventilating, or without like being, what is all of the words that attach to anxiety or can be exchanged with anxiety. If you are that kind of a person, then I'm not going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to validate number one and say, yes, it's extremely difficult, and maybe your situation from the other person's situation is better or worse, but you are the only judge of your own situation. And if it is difficult for you, then I validate, and you can validate to yourself and say, yes, this is difficult for me, regardless it is just a small child crying while you want to go to the bathroom and be in peace just for 5 minutes. That's a huge problem for in that moment. That is a problem, and we acknowledge that that is a problem. Or you have not slept the entire night because of a colic baby, where versus a mom who is a mom of a teenager who is going spirally out of control, and she is weighed down, almost going into depression because she does not know how to connect with her teen child. Both the mothers, both are human beings, both need help, both need support, both need a healthy mind state, and both need to calm down in order to solve their problem. Right? We agree on this? Alhamdulillah. So, which comes first, doing more or feeling better? When we are feeling down and stuck, we often become less active. We don't feel like socializing, exercising, taking care of ourselves, or even actually coming to this life, because I'm so exhausted. I don't want to hear how can I make my life better. I want to feel better in order to know how to make my life better. Do you know this? We often think that once we feel better, once we find a positive mindset, once we find a positive environment, once we will get an encouragement or a yes or a permission from someone else, only then can we be able to do more, which is actually not true. Which is actually not true. Feelings are emotions that swipe up over us like waves, whereas actions are something that are congruent, that you are basically doing. So what am I trying to say here? Or am I trying to say if you're sick and tired and you're so sleepy, you still get up and go for a walk? No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say is that you basically set up yourself with an identifiable map where you can actually go back to, and you can actually go back to, and you can say, okay, this and this is what I thought to do. These are the things that I did. These are the things that I want to do. You have something that you can lean back to, you can fall back to, because when we are tired, our memories are not functioning well, which is absolutely true. We tend to forget, and I've said this so many times, and I know many other people have said this too, and you have heard this so many times, that when you have been living in stress, regardless what level of stress it is, but when it has been a continuous process in your life, we tend to forget things. We tend to forget things. So writing them down, writing our goals, writing our values, writing our analysis is always very, very helpful. And if you don't want to write, you just pick up your phone and you make voice notes so that you can go back to your voice notes. You date them and you go back to them. These are the two things that you need to do. What are the basic human needs? Autonomy, that you are able to decide for yourself what you want to do, right? You want to do that. And then what is it? Then it's relatedness. What is relatedness? Satisfying connections with other people. There was a very famous TED Talk, actually, there are many famous TED Talks that tell you that the number one thing that is the most important ingredient in anybody's life being healthy and long is their relationships. And subhanAllah, we will come back to Quran because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that have good relationships with your relatives. And the people who have tried in their life to have those good, healthy relationships that made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala their first priority, Quran and Sunnah and learning their second priority, their physical health, emotional health, their third priority. And then after that, listen to this, Quran, Sunnah first, learning second, being educated, gaining knowledge throughout life. You don't have to go to a college, sit, have loans and take degrees. You can just have knowledge by joining into circles and halaqas and groups of people who are knowledgeable, who you know can actually help you keep engaged and motivated towards your life goals, your life achievements, your life missions, your life visions. And today, in today's age, that's extremely possible. That's essentially everywhere. So alhamdulillah, actually it's overwhelming. You have to pick and choose sometimes. You can't do everything at the same time. So there's a fear of FOMO, again, digressing from what I was saying. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, Quran, Sunnah learning second, your physical and emotional health third, then comes your relationships. You cannot pour from an empty cup. We've heard this a million times. Competence. Number three is, so autonomy is what we want, and relatedness, and then it's competence. Feeling like we're good at what we do and able to put our talents to use. The better these needs are met, the more life satisfaction and well experience. So now coming back to the relationship of us being a mother. The first time mother has never been a mother. She might have been an aunt, she might have been a nanny, she might have been a school teacher, she might have been a governess, she might have been a godmother, whatever it needs to be. But when you are not a parent, but you have parented, that experience from being a parent is totally different, because now you're with their child 24/7 with all the problems, with all the happiness, with all the emotions, all day, every day, 24/7. So what to do when you start feeling that this is not working out? Number one thing is you identify your values and your activities for that day. So you can write this down. What are my values in every compartment of my life? And what are the activities that I help to fulfill that value system? I will give you an example. For example, our values and activities will be in a form of relationships, for example, or in the form of faith. Let's start with faith. So let's say this, that I've always, or you have always been a person of faith, a person of spirituality, reading books, going to halaqas, doing Quran classes. Maybe you're still enrolled in some sort of tajweed class. You are regular in doing that. What is it in your value system that you value for your faith? Well, I want to do 2 extra nawafil before Fajr. Okay, is that possible? Well, my child is up all night. Yeah, that is possible. I might, whenever she dozes off or he dozes off, I can do that. Or if your children are older, then I want to do a halaqah with my children. That's your value for your faith and your family. So two things that you value, your relationships and your faith, they combine together. So what activity? Activity number one, activity number two, activity number three. These are the three activities that I've decided for myself. If you are into physical fitness, or if you have been feeling down and you think that you're going through depression and you're taking the necessary steps to fight that depression or to fight that anxiety, then you can say food and fitness. Food and fitness are the number one thing, whether or not you're diagnosed with a condition or you're not diagnosed or you're self-diagnosing yourself. These are the two things in your value system that can add to you calming down, to you centering yourself. So what types of food are you eating? What types of food are good for you? What types of food are bad for you? Oh, I have an obsession with bread. I can't leave bread, but it's not good for my weight. Okay, what substitutes can I use? I will slowly and gradually, I'm not going to cut off everything all at once and feel miserable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this and subtract this and add this and subtract this, and see what's going to work for me. So those will be your activities throughout the week. And so, for example, there's someone. Okay, so someone sits down and someone says, what are my values? My relationship, my faith, my health. These are the three topmost values for me right now. As a young mom of young children, I am depleted of energy, and what are the things that are going to make me happy? And maybe one of them is friendships, or maybe one of them is having time for self. And that time for self does not mean that you have to get out of the house every single day. That time of self can also mean maybe doing some extra reading, or maybe, and I've seen this and I'm guilty of this myself, and I will acknowledge this because this is a fact that we don't talk about, that mothers, when their children go to sleep, they scroll on the phone, they go onto their social media, and they're checking everything, and they're saying, well, this is my me time. What's happening during that time is our brain is getting fried. And if I've had a negative sense of experiences, and I will talk about changing the negative mindset into the positive, that's the later part of this discussion of how we can sense calm ourselves. But the first part is finding our value system, and then the activities that coincide with that value system, so that we can feel that we're doing something positive in our life every single day. And it does not have to be an activity or an item outside of the house, or specifically at a specific time of a day, but that activity has to make sense to you, so that we get a positive sense of fulfillment, which actually calms our stress level down, and it helps us understand, and it helps us feel fulfilled. Like I said, we need autonomy, we need relatedness, and we need this sense of fulfillment, that we are doing something, right? So also um, for example, I've talked in another class about this, that every child needs one-on-one connectedness. Another way to find calm in our daily mundane routines of motherhood, and I'm specifically talking about mothers, whether you are 24/7 with your kids, whether you're a full-time working mom and you see your kids in the evening, whether you're a homeschooling mother, or whether you are a single parent and you have responsibilities of parenthood as well as you have responsibility. And I can say this without any shame or without throwing shade at anybody, that most of us married women do feel like single parents, because if the spouse is the breadwinner, then they're outside of the home most of the time, and by the time they come home, they're so exhausted, they have found their thing to do so that they can calm down and relax, whereas we don't find that space to do that. And that is also a mental block that stops us from becoming calmer and living a value-based, activity-based, related-based life. So we will come down to that as well. I hope I've made myself clear so far, and I've not confused a lot of people. Once your values are known, once your activities are known, those activities don't have to be grandeur gestures. Like, for example, today I made a fantastic meal for myself and I did it, but I was so tired, the kitchen was so messy, now I can't do it again. No, you do small steps, but consistent steps, regular steps. And I was talking about one-on-one filling in with your children. So one of your values, if one of your values is relationships, then of course, being a mother, our relationship with our children is our highest priority, right? Of course, our spouses, with our spouses should be our number one, and then children, because spouses first, children second. that's a different argument, and that's a different story. And of course, everybody has their set of stories and their set of baggage that they bring in when we discuss this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, coming back to the point. One of our values can be that we spend one-on-one time with each child, whether they're 0 to 6 months to 9 months to 20 months to 20 years, but we spend time with them. If your children are college going students and you are an empty nester, then maybe connecting with them through text, or having a scheduled time of the week to talk to them, FaceTime them. If you are with smaller children every single day, then making activities where every child knows that this is mama's and child number two's time, whereas the rest of them are playing. Or when you put the baby to sleep, then your older one or your toddler, you can spend a little bit more time with them. And you doing this purposefully actually helps you combat that negative emotion that I'm stuck with this kid. This is especially for younger moms, because if I remember correctly, the younger moms means the moms with younger children. It doesn't mean your age, it means how many younger children you have. Because if I remember my years of parenthood from when my children were from 0 to 7, the most dominant feeling was I'm stuck with them. I can't do anything else except for eat, feed, change diapers, and make them feel happy and attend to them. Whereas that was my job, but my mindset wasn't that this is something that I am nurturing towards the future. When your mindset is not of that you're nurturing them, or you start getting tired. Actually, no mother thinks that she's not nurturing her children. She thinks that she's doing her best, most possible. But when it starts to become mundane, and when you start to feel as if you're burnt out because you have not set out your values and you do not have activities that actually fill your cup of relationships, of fitness, of health, of self-love, then of course it becomes difficult. So it's extremely important that you identify these, and you don't have to wait to feel good to do something that will fill your cup. In fact, you have to put an action plan and start doing it, so that the feeling of goodness or that rewarding feeling comes back to you. I hope I made that point clear. There's another important point is you need to know we are very smart beings, and we know this. Like, before we start anything, we know that we're going to destroy it. We know this. Like, I know I'm going to do this today, but I won't be able to continue it. Or yeah, I know, but my husband, but my mother-in-law, but my sister-in-law, but my parents, but my appointments, but my job, but my sleep, but my depression, but my children. And we put in all these buts when we are actually scheduling something. So what we need to do is we need to have accountability. And that accountability, sometimes we're so lonely, and I address to this fact that I'll give you my example, because that makes us human, and that tells that the person who is talking is not all knowledgeable. And I attest to that, and I humbly attest to that I'm not all knowledgeable, and I have made my set of mistakes, and I still make my set of mistakes. Even though I am a coach, I'm a life coach, but I have my set of struggles, because we come from patterns, and those patterns are from our childhood. And if it takes us longer to understand and break those patterns and those cycles, it becomes more difficult and more challenging. But alhamdulillah, as long as there is breath in us, there is life in us, we have a chance to become better. Alhamdulillah for that. So for the past 3 years, I knew that my health was deteriorating, and I needed to have a healthy lifestyle. And I kept expecting it from everybody else to make that healthy lifestyle for me. And I moped, and I was angry, and I was sad, and I was depressed, and I was hopeless, thinking that, everybody knows that my health is not good, but nobody's doing anything. Well, it was not anybody's job to do anything. They can facilitate to some extent, but for me to feel good to take an action was not taking me anywhere. So I was feeling at my worst when one day I picked myself up, and I went to seek for help, and I got help. And once I got that help, alhamdulillah, I've been on track, and I started feeling good about myself, and I started feeling good about my health. So usually, as our Deen tells us, your intention is the best thing that you do. Make your intention, start with the action. You will be able to reap your rewards later. Okay, so how do you identify thoughts? Many of our emotional reactions come from how we think things happen, and as humans, we want to understand our world, so we create our stories. Another important thing to calm down in our everyday life, to give ourselves a break from our mental thought process is to know how we make our own stories, how we believe in ourselves, and how we see people, and in what light we see people. And here, over here, I will definitely talk about how we tend to our relationships, because again, relationships and thought processes are something that is our everyday in and out. What are you thinking? Like, majority of a day, what is a mother thinking about? She's thinking about her kids, definitely. She's thinking about putting food on the table, yes. She's thinking about laundry, yes. But she's also thinking about, what did the other person say to me? How did she make me feel? How did he make me feel? Of course, our husbands, and anything else that's involved in our interactions and our thought processes. Why is it that a mother is already upset even before the child has done something wrong? Because of our thought process, because we think this happened yesterday and this happened before yesterday. And and an easy example is potty training. An easy example is potty training. Or an easy example is a teenager who told you that, who made a, who vouched that, oh, they're not going to use their phone or their screen time after 9 p.m., but they still end up doing so. Or an older child or a sibling of ours, or even our husbands, who said, oh well, I'm not going to do this, but they still end up doing it. Or we, to ourselves, we women are very hard on ourselves. We say, okay, we're going to start this routine, and then we fall off the wagon, and then we are like, oh, you're despicable, and you're useless, and you're worthless. And we start using these words into our mind, into our thought process, to make a story. Sometimes we see somebody and their facial expressions are not good, and we just start imagining they're mad at us, or yeah, they're going to come to us with their set of problems, or they're inconsiderate, because why can't they see that I'm also mad? Or, even in our marriages, that before anything is even said or done, we're already assuming things. And when we are into that thought process, into that pattern of assuming things, what happens is we cannot create calm. You're not already calm. Going into a conversation, in my head it is, this is battleground. Okay, fine, I'm going to tell this person how exactly I feel. I've not even listened to the person. How am I supposed to then process? Because the story is already made up, and I'm very gung-ho on my story. If you are so bent that your story is the truth and absolute truth, because your experiences have led you to that truth, then you're not open to calmness, then you're not open to resolution, then you're not open to change. And when you're not open to all these three things, then how are we able to change the narration? How are we able to change the story? And why do we want to change the story? Because we want to create calm. Because we want to create calm in our lives. Alhamdulillah. So um, unhelpful thoughts create unhelpful emotions, which create, in fact, a negative sense of energy, which actually depletes us from our power to create calm. Again, I can simply say, well, when you see these negative thoughts, stop thinking and actually start thinking of good things, and start imagining for good things, and put your feet on the ground and breathe in and breathe out. And that is absolutely correct. You actually need to do that. You need to physically put yourself out of that place of negativity, whether it's the space in the room. You need to move out. I always say this to my clients. I say, move out of that space, even if it is 2 steps. If you're standing in one spot and you find yourself, and you find this anger, this fire surging from your feet up to your head, or from your head down to your body, there is this sensation, there's this burning sensation that's happening inside you, where you feel as if with your full might you're going to just throw away everything, through your words, through your expressions, through your scrunched face, through your tone of voice. It takes 1 second. Seriously, it just takes 1 second to say, Iram, what are you doing? What are you going to do? 2 seconds. Iram, what are you doing? What are you going to do? And that anger, that ball of anger, slightly, it doesn't come down to level 0 if it's at level 10, but at least it will come to level 8. And then you have that space from level 10 to level 8. Now you have 2 more seconds to ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this necessary? Okay, no, it's not necessary. But now, but and oh this, oh that, oh that. That's the negative cycle that's actually pushing you towards blocking the positive, calm thought process. And so I'm tell this again and again, and this is why you will hear so many stories where people say, "Oh, I pledged to myself I'm not going to yell," but 5 minutes later I saw myself yelling. It will take months. It will take years. This is another thing that I keep telling mothers is like, if you have come this far to get coaching, to join to join people of, or to join this tribe like Parenting with Allah by My Side, to come to these master classes, to come to these lectures, to come to these conferences, to sign up for a course. That is step one. Alhamdulillah, you were feeling bad, but you did an action so that you can learn something, so that your thought process can change, so that the activity can you change. And in that value system, if you're right now listening to this, whether it's live or whether it's later, if you're listening to this and your value system is, in your value system somewhere there is education and relationships are on the top of your priority list, and in one of your activities you can say, today I learned this, or I gave myself this much time to learn something about centering myself, about calming myself down. How, and then when I was saying that when you give yourself 2 seconds, then you can also say, okay, what are the predictions that I'm making? You have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What will this serve me as? What are the predictions that I'm making? Why am I misunderstanding my child's or my spouse's or somebody else's intent? Or did we misread the situation? Sometimes we totally, and this happens with our teens the most. I know this by example because I have, mashallah, 3 adolescent children, and sometimes they're doing something, and I'm like, it's in my mouth and I'm going to say, but now I stop myself. Usually what I used to do was I just used to blurt out the thing that they were obviously doing. Have you ever seen this? And we get upset with this with our own mothers as well. We're like, now that you're mothers yourself, you can actually relate to this. Like, you're going to pour a cup of water and you want to keep the cup back into the sink, but for some reason what you did was you took the cup, you took a sip, and then you start looking at your phone and you put the cup somewhere there, and you're just about to turn, but in your mind you know, that you're going to put this back, but you just turn for a second, and within that 1 second a voice comes from behind and says, put it back, go back and put it back. You're like, in your head you're saying, I was going to put it back, just give me a break, I was going to put it back. And sometimes the teens tell us, I was going to do it, you should just observe. Or sometimes they say, I was, whereas sometimes they would not intentfully forget to do the task they were supposed to do, they would just forget. And there comes in, and for toddlers and for adolescent children, their brains are almost similar. It's amazing, but their brains are almost similar. They're rewiring and they're learning, and forgetfulness is one of the most highlighted parts of their brain development, that they will forget or they will feel overwhelmed very quickly. That is again learning the brain science of adolescents, or learning the brain science of children. So that's not the topic, but I hope you can relate to that. I hope you can relate to why sometimes we're so anxious or why sometimes we're so cranky, because nobody believed in our ability or capacity to do something that we were already having the intention to do. And if you've been in that place, then you have more compassion for your children, and you can wait and you can say, you know what, I'll just observe, I'll just quietly observe and keep quiet, and keep quiet. On a side note, not everybody is able to do this very quickly, or learn this very quickly, or understand this very quickly, or relate with this very quickly, because we have because of how we have developed our thought process cycle. If you or I am a person who mostly thinks pessimistic thoughts before the optimistic ones, then this activity becomes more difficult. And again, you don't have to feel good to make this into an action of encouragingly, I will use the word encouragingly start with a positive mindset. Say to yourself, I'm going to have husn zan of this person. I'm going to think good of this person. I'm going to think good of myself, and I'm going to think good of about this person. Okay. You can always label your errors in thinking. Another thing, how you can calm down yourself, is you can always think of errors. Like, for example, It's been 34 minutes. Inshallah, I'll wrap this quickly. Whether or not your thought process is irrational. How, for example, we might tell ourselves that everybody must think well of us or we'll be terribly upset, right? So the rational emotive behavior therapy was designed to identify irrational thinking and replace it with rational thoughts. Everybody every time cannot be happy with us. We cannot satisfy people all the time. We can have good intentions and we can communicate our actions before we are doing the action, while we are doing the action, but to expect that they will be happy with our actions and our intentions and the result of that actions is an irrational thought process. So to expect from a 2-year-old to be happy that mama has fed the 2-year-olds and bathed the 2-year-olds and put them to sleep and even took them out for a walk and had a play date for them and played nursery rhymes with them and played silly peekaboo with them, and still the baby is upset that why did you give him milk in the red cup and not in the blue cup, then the irrational thought is you should be grateful to what I've done for you. Will the child knows that you are their caretaker and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them to you, so they do not care how tired you are. And it will be irrational for us mothers to say you should be grateful, you have such a wonderful mother. That's not going to be there, and that's not for a 2-year-old, and that's not for a 12-year-old, and that's not for a 22-year-old. Of course 12-year-olds and 22-year-olds, there are other processes of having conversations with them, but and the irrational thought is, oh, everybody should see how much I'm working and how hard I'm working, and they should acknowledge me and they should be grateful to me. My husband, especially our husbands, they don't realize how much work it is. Yes, they don't realize how much work it is, and that's the fact of the matter. And we don't realize how much work they do, and that's the fact of the matter as well. And again, that has to do with the thought process. So that's one irrational. One of the labeling of errors in thinking is irrational thinking. Number 2 is dysfunctional thinking. What is dysfunctional means? What does not serve us well. A thought process that does not serve us well is a dysfunctional thought process. How, for example, oh well, whatever I do, they're never going to be happy. Oh well, whatever I do, it's never going to be enough. Oh well, this is never going to change. The person is never going to change. People don't change. We develop skills and tools to relate better to the situation, to either save ourselves from burning down or save ourselves from dysfunctional thoughts. Those are the tools that we need to build. Nothing is an absolute. Except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kun, nothing is absolute. So that's sort of a dysfunctional thought process that, oh, this is never going to change, this is never going to happen, this is never, 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 never. Instead of never, 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 we start finding out sometimes, however, later, together, all these positive terms we fill into our actions, we put them into our actions, and then we see how the thought process. Biased. A large number of studies have shown how one-sided of our thoughts tend to be when we are anxious and depressed. For example, in social anxiety disorder, a person is likely to notice potentially negative feedback. For example, 10 people have said, oh mashallah, you're looking so nice. Oh mashallah, today you look beautiful. But one person comes and says, oh my god, your eyes, oh, haven't you slept? And you're just like, oh my god, I knew I was coming to this dawat, I was coming to this family function, and I've been taking care of my skin, and I actually tried to sleep more, and still my eye bags are still visible, that visible. Now you totally disregard what those 10 people told you, that you were looking good, and this one person comes in and they notice something of a flaw in you. In your head you think that's a flaw, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So that's the kind of a biased thinking that puts you towards anxiety and depression. And then the fourth one is distorted. Errors is thinking that don't actually reflect the reality. When I think we're completely incompetent after making a minor error, or that nobody will like us because one person treated us unkindly through. So for example, mothers always have this sort of distortion. Oh, I was not able to identify. I'll tell you this again. Life examples. Life examples are extremely great. I was a teacher for a pre-K nursery school, and my child was right next door to me. And every morning, as a parent, I would wake myself up. I would make my children up. We would get ready together. We would sit in the car. We would go to the same school. We would go to the classrooms that were right next to each other. And we've been doing this. And One day, my daughter, after school, she came into my classroom, right? And the assistant teacher was her teacher from past year. So the assistant teacher was attached to my kid, and she's looking at my kid, and she's talking to my child, and suddenly she looks at her ear, and her ear has, you know, when you try to put earrings and those they start getting crusty and they start getting infected. So her ear was infected. It's not even it started to get crusty, it was infected. And the first thing my co-teacher says to me is like, what kind of a mother are you? Didn't you see your child has an infection right there? And I know she might have been coming from from a good point of view, or from a sense of urgency for the kid, that the kid is in pain. But my kid never complained to me, and honestly, I did not check her ears. I did not check her ears. And what do you think I felt at that moment? I felt extremely embarrassed. I felt angry. I felt incompetent, and I did not know what to do. I had absolutely, I froze. I froze. I did not know what to do, because somebody else told me that because of this one error of seeing or observation, now I'm incompetent. What was that distorted mindset going to do to me morally? I was in a bad state of mood. I was not mean to anybody else, but I the whole day I just kept kicking myself in my head, like, you are so incompetent. How come you, this is your own child, you did not know what to do with your child? And then I even yelled at my child and I said, why didn't you tell me that you had pain in your ear? She said, well, I didn't want you to do anything to me. I didn't want you to touch my ear. So I was so scared. I did not tell you that I had something happening there. So do you understand how many things were happening right now? And this is a real life example. And we mothers face these examples and we learn from them and we find our center and we calm down, and then we recuperate to actually address our problems and find solutions for them. You will make an error. Please make no mistake to understand that errors are a human part of us. We are filled with errors. We are supposed to make errors. We will always make errors. And recouping back from those errors is also something that's a part of our journey. And if we recoup from them in a calm centered way, we will get further in our journey with our value system, with better relationships, with a more positive outlook towards life, rather if we get towards them with negative understanding. Alhamdulillah, I hope everything that I've said in the past 42 minutes and 13 seconds made sense. Inshallah ta'ala. Another note that I have to make on a side note is, create your tribe, know your people, trust your people. Trust your people. Not everybody is out there to get us. Not everybody is out there to pull us down. Not everybody has a bad ill or intention towards us. Please, in today's society, actually human nature never changes. Probably this is from Adam and Hawa's time, wallahu alam. But the thing is, we usually think toward or grab the negative before we grab the positive. Use your family relationships, especially for your children, to nurture, to care. If we don't get well along with a certain in-law, or if we have ex-spouses, or if we are single parents with shared custody of children, or if we are new moms and we are learning so much and we've joined these tribes and halaqas, and you have these coaches and mentors telling you certain thing which is different from an adult, or from your mother-in-law, from your mother itself, or from your sister-in-law, or from your sister itself, and you think you know all. Listen, humble ourselves down. I've learned this the hard way. Humble myself down. Humble myself down. I don't know everything, and no human beings knows everything. This overrated, exaggerated confidence. So we are between two worlds. We are overrated, exaggerated confidence when it comes to people we don't like, and we say, shut up, you don't know, I know. Or we are underwhelmed, underconfident. In fact, we are so distorted in our thought process that even what we are doing, we diminish the good by saying, no, this is not good, or no, maybe the other person didn't accept it. Our self-esteem is so low. Our self-esteem is so low. So please try to understand where you are in the between these two worlds, and come in the middle. Come the middle path. Come the middle path. Take the knowledge, take the understanding of the people who have gone through this path before. Do not sever your relationships just because you don't like someone, and sever your child's relationship with them just because you don't like them. take in the positives, look at the positives more. And these four things that I talked about are how we think about other people, or how we think about the irrational thought, distorted thought, the dysfunctional thought, and there was another one which I'm forgetting. Look into this, because only if we work on these, we will be able to calm ourselves down. Only then we will be able to put our best intention and best effort forward. Otherwise, we will always keep falling short. So yes, it's a lot of pick and choose, but if you have this basic line of choosing that I will go for where there is more khair, I will actually be more open to listening. At least be just more open to listening, so that we can change our negative perspectives or negative or self-doubting thought processes in order to find that calm. There is no other way to find calm. If I have low self-esteem, and if I'm not happy with my value system, and if I'm not filling my cup, and if I'm not centering myself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with tawakkul and with knowledge, with education and with openness and agreeableness, then just having these breathing exercises is not going to help me, because very quickly I'm going to fall back into that same negative pattern. And the most important thing, if you take anything, is you don't have to feel good to start making good decisions of your life. You actually have to start doing something positive towards your life, in your life, in order to feel good. Don't wait for that feel good moment. That's not ever going to arrive, because we are insatiously incapable of ever feeling satisfied. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on us. Jazakallahu khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. Wa alaikum assalam to everybody from Facebook and YouTube who signed in, who joined in, who sent their salams. I hope this was helpful. Inshallah ta'ala, we will be having another master class next week sometime. Till then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.